Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and especially through this series as I'm going through the history of Ordia. And if you guys are wondering what Ordia is, it's basically right behind me here, my book that I made. I published the first one and I'm working on the rest. It will be a 5-book fantasy series, and I made an entire lore and history to it, which is the point of this series, pretty much. Eventually, my plan is to narrate, read through my book, because I thought it would be fun. But I also thought, additionally, it would be great to include some history, some condensed history, I'll say. Because I'm reading through the first age here, and the last episode was all about the War of Shadows. And that was the first official war of Ordia, where Telekor, or Ulgol, as he is later renamed, pretty much causes mass hysteria and chaos and calamity upon Ordia. And that was all about last episode, so check that out. Definitely check that out, because it has some important aspects and events on that. This one, we're going to be finishing pretty much the first age. So this will be kind of like the aftermath of the War of Shadow and what happens after that in the first age. So here we go. After the immense war, all Ordians returned to their cities and began to rebuild and restore their lands. This was no simple task, and some things required many years of rebuilding. The military groups were trained harder, and the armories grew immensely in size. Each city had better defenses after years of rebuilding. In addition, some groups were tasked to hunt down or track down anyone or anything that worked and fought for the darkness, and either to capture or kill them. This began in Salmoria between Karagi League, Vase, and Belif in 730 SD, and it became a regular group by 745. It reached to Mason Orkine, and they adapted this as well by 748. All across Ordia, these hunting groups scoured the lands for traces of Dark Alistani, Oryx, Goblins, and anyone who once worked with Ulgol and Still Wood. Some of their tactics were sometimes brutal because of the hatred the groups had during the war and how much sadness and devastation it caused for everyone. These groups hunted until nearly no traces of the darkness could be seen or felt, all except Krug Dulag. But when they ventured into those lands in 798 SD, they found nothing but discarded corpses of all sorts of beings. They burnt everything and left the lands out of intense dread and paranoia. By 850 SD, the hunting groups were stopped since no other dark forces were seen or heard of. Between 850 and 965 SD, it was a somewhat peaceful space of time, though most of the cities kept to themselves. Caravans and trades began appearing more often, and around 862 SD, Ordia was flourishing back again. Zephythia was still in fear of Karuk Dalag, and Belif in fear of both Velin and Threlong. The city of Inti kept a watchful eye on the northern Algard ranges as well. Orkara was watched by the dwarves for possible war as well. Dal would be left leaderless throughout its entire existence. The elves in Altorium began to be paranoid that the Korlag forest, the magical boundaries surrounding the woods, were ominous and thick, meaning that many creatures were trying to escape and near to Altorium. Many times the guards would begin to see peculiar things in the woods, but only through glimpses. In 965 SD, a part of the barrier around Korlag forest was broken by a few remaining Alistani, who were still under the servitude of Ulgol. Many of the corrupted changelings were released, as well as the potent spell which Ulgol had placed on the forest. The elves of Altorium fought each day and night with the corrupted, as they would be called, and for many years there was no stop. Finally, in 998 SD, the Valanra appointed at the time, stormed into the forest with a noble group of elves, fighting off the corrupted, and found the holy river of which the kind changelings were. They made allies with them and carried back the water, which they would use to seal the boundary again. It was still too late, though, as the shadows of the darkness grew again and spread into the roots of Ordia. More cults began to stir up, especially in Zephythia and Mulanti, claiming they followed neither Alavendel nor Ulgol, but a strange deity that they saw in the sky, who entered their minds and gave them nightmares, and they called it the Grey Watcher. Goblins began to make refuge in the Algard and Upper Golden Ranges, raiding villages and slipping into cities to cause mayhem. Between 1003 and 1012 SD, alchemy began to have a rising intrigue. It began spreading first in Vase, which followed to Pelgoth and to Koragi League. As it grew, the more dangerous it became, resulting in many accidents and even more direct attacks. This all led to brawls and fights and overall rampant violence in a quick matter of time. Soldiers from all over Ordia would come to settle disputes if the timing was right. So the cities decided to settle 2 new towns as a mark for the soldiers and magicians to settle in, close enough to the cities in case of emergencies. One was Toriel in Muliantes, so that they could go to either Pelgoth or Vase, and the other was Tamos, to go either to Vase or Koragi League. It was in 1017 SD that an alchemy uprising was at hand in Vase, and it took a surprising turn to see that Tolvia was involved too. Many dwarves were lured into alchemy at this time, and many were swayed toward the darkness to create better and more efficient things, but at a high and bad price. During 1017 and 1155 SD, alchemists would be the dominant threat, but they did not want to dominate Ordia, only to be recognized what they could do without magic. This mentality spread into Belif as well, and in 1023 SD there was an alchemist guild established. Vase followed through with their own guild in 1025 SD, and even a small gathering would visit often in Pelgoth starting in 1026. There were rumors during the alchemist uprising that crooked experiments were performed in the places of Ulor Tulas, Orkara, and the Torash stronghold. Between 1017 and 1150 SD, there were many horrible and deformed creatures that Ordians faced and knew they were not of the changelings. These creatures had pieces or limbs of other creatures sewn or melded into each other, making terrible monsters that only caused havoc. Among the alchemists, there were 2 who were the most horrible and who gave no mercy and no care. These were Dargon, creator of madness, who was a human, and Silria, the sewer of limbs, who was an elf. Despite having many different evils now in Ordia, the alchemist uprising didn't last long because of all the people in Ordia rising up against them at once, fearing that another Dark Lord would possibly be summoned by dark incantations. This would be the second greatest triumph of Ordia as a whole between all races. They stormed each of the alchemist guilds and any traces they could find of them that were of bad intentions. In a matter of 5 years, the only places left for the alchemists were Ulor Tulas and Orkara. It was in 1155 SD that both groups of alchemists, very few in number, surrendered and peace was at hand finally. It took another 50 years to establish peaceful allies and accepted most places as traveling grounds for trading and caravans. The First Age would come to an end because of a unified agreement between all races to protect each other against the darkness and all those who stood with Ugol's teachings of Volkavi. Between 1160 and 1210 SD, there were sea routes that were established along all but the northern coast of Ordia. Some were made earlier before the war had got out of hand but were ceased and changed because of the dangers. But now without the war, the sea was somewhat open to Ordians. They still feared the open ocean because of all the tragedies beforehand and only went as far to barely see the coast from the distance. Sea docks and villages were established across many of the coasts as well. By the time everything had been established and peace was among Ordians, they declared that the First Age was officially ended in 1215. And that's kind of like where the First Age ends. And I did have a couple of notes that I had here, just for like kind of like the fun of it, because the First Age was definitely like an age of curiosity and mystery. So there's 2 things that I put that I called the rumors or the myths originating from the First Age. So this first one was actually, like it says here, rumors began originally actually in the Third Age here. So rumors began in the Third Age that a forgotten Tanalan was not told in the history telling of Ordia. A discovery of old scrolls and tomes in the northern Algarn ranges were considered a relic of the past. It was dated with the years 490 to 517 SD, and it was not found until 2560 SD. This forgotten Tanalan was named Amakra, and it was told that he played a part in the descent of Telekor, that he actually tricked Jalrif so that he would not notice Telekor reaching towards the void of the One Gem. and soon after Amakra disappeared from sight, leaving Jalruf to be the one to blame. Jalruf would not only despise Telekor, but Amakra as well, and called him the Coward of Eternity, for he always fled and hid away for the rest of his existence, as it was part of who he was. Many Ordians would disclaim this theory, since they thought it was foolish for the Alumnar to create a being only for mischief and mockery. Others, like the Alistanian Alchemists, took some belief to it. And the second myth here is basically this, what I labeled as the discovery of the shimmering kingdom of Aquiamena. Near the end of the First Age, humans attempted to explore the vast ocean, and only 5 explorers were able to get out into the open sea. They were the only ones who saw the Alumnar in their true form. Towering thousands of feet high, the water of the ocean only rose up to their knees. Their might and splendor were amazing to behold, and because the crew had dedicated their lives to the sea and to Alavendel and the Alumnar, the Immortals crafted a hidden kingdom beneath the waves, one that would eventually strive but also become a fairy tale or a myth. They would later be known as the Aquiamena, or Water People, and eventually translated to Mer People. They had extended life, but each died in the sea after a few hundred years building this kingdom. Only a few of these Aquiamena returned to Ordia, but when that happened, the lands of Ordia were just a distant memory. Yeah, and that's, that's all I have for you guys for the First Age. So I'll be reading through some notes that I have of the Second Age, which has a few battles and wars and stuff in the Second Age as well. But eventually, way in the future here, I'll be writing my own books of the First Age and the Second Age. And the Second Age is kind of chaotic, so I don't have as much of the Second Age as I do in the First Age, so it'll be a little quicker. Hopefully I'll be able to record it before the end of the year here. But yeah, if you can't tell, there's a lot of backstory to stuff. And what I have in the Lands of Ordia here in the main series, I have a lot of ties from the First Age. There are references to the Second Age here and there, but I would say most of it comes from the First Age, and that's why I thought it was a good idea to kind of, glance through the First Age and tell you guys a little bit about it, and hopefully kind of get, enamored by all this history and lore, so that when I do start reading it, there'll be some reference points for you guys to go back to. But yeah, so that'll be the end of the First Age. The Second Age videos, it might only be 3 or 4 videos, so it'll be a quicker, it'll be quicker videos, and it'll be less time before I start narrating my own book, which I'm excited for. So I think, if you guys want to comment on anything about the history or lore, I would appreciate it. That'd be really fun. But I think without all the rambling and reading and out of the way, I think that'll be it for the First Age notes. Like I said, there's going to be a few up ahead, so I'll see you guys in the next episode. And I just can't wait to explore some more Ordia with you guys.